Hello and welcome to round one of the Seattle, Washington Regional Championship. My name is Kenny Wisdom, and I am bringing you a match between the defending Seattle Regional Champion Israel Sosa and Jeffery Barros. To get a little bit of information about the tournament out of the way, we will be having 8 rounds today in the standard format with a top 8 tomorrow. There are 170 masters, so that indicates 8 rounds, no days to Swiss. And these matches are actually being played in 60 minutes, so an extra 10 minutes on top of the normal time limit, which should help to alleviate some of the time constraints that some players face. And getting into this match, on your left, like I said, Israel Sosa, a 3-time regional champion last year, won this event last year, has his Worlds invite this year. I don't think he's won any major events this year, although I'm willing to admit that I could be wrong about that. But he, quite the player, deviating from his usual Eviltal strategy, actually playing against Eviltal this time, in the hands of Jeffery Barros, who I'm pretty unfamiliar with. When I asked him to come to the feature match table, he seemed a little bit surprised, so I'm not sure if he's a newer player or maybe just new to big events, but should be an interesting match. And the most interesting thing we see on the board right now is on Jeffrey's side, which I believe is a Diancie EX. For those of you who don't know what that card does, for a DCE you can do 20, and during your opponent's next turn, any damage by attacks from the defending Pokemon is reduced by 20. And then for 2 fairy and a colorless, it does 80, and you flip 2 coins, and for each head it does 40 more. Resistant to dark, weak to metal. So interesting. I haven't seen that card in competitive play yet, but it will be interesting to see how Jeffrey decides to take this. And as you can see on Israel's side, he's playing Exeggutor. Been a pretty popular deck through the state championship run. It's personally the deck I would choose if I were playing as well. Basically, it just relies on having Exeggutor up. And for 1 energy, Exeggutor can do 10 damage, and with its attack blockade, that prevents your opponent from using supporter cards. So it's reminiscent of Seismitoad in that its damage output is not the highest for sure, but its effect is just so good. And then you can also help to increase that damage based on things like Muscle Band and Hypnotoxic Laser and Burbank City Gym, as you've seen Israel do. So now, assuming nothing changes, Jeffrey is going to go up to 60 damage after the Burbank takes effect, and then if Israel can get the blockade next turn, he'll be doing 30 with blockade, bringing that Eviltal up to 90, and then after the Burbank takes effect, going into Jeffrey's next turn, he'll be up to 120. So you can see, there's a low damage output for that deck for sure, but I think Israel just top decked that Exeggutor as well. But like the Seismitoad deck, you can use a little bit of tools and trainer cards to really help you out. Unlike the Seismitoad deck, Exeggutor is not an EX, so it doesn't have those big hit points, and you do have to evolve it. But thankfully, you get to your opponent doesn't get to take 2 prizes either. So it's kind of how it balances out. Crushing Hammer is also a big part of the strategy. Sort of the Seismitoad decks, you just kind of want to run them out of resources and grind them down. And we saw that we saw that Jeffrey did get that Mega Diancie out. Tried to evolve it last turn, remembered it was his first turn, so now he's just going to go ahead and Mega Evolve and pass the turn. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Jeffrey has much going on. We see he missed that roller skates flip. Pretty unfortunate, as his Eviltal is going to be knocked out. His Diancie does have energy on it, though. Has, I believe, a DCE and a Fairy now. And just as a reminder that Mega is going to be doing Diamond Force for a 2 fairy and a colorless is 100. And during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to each of your Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX. So, unfortunately, not going to do a whole lot versus Israel's deck. The only EXs, a heal run, are Virizion and Genesect. And Virizion's mostly there to protect you and your other Pokemon from special conditions. And then Genesect is there to activate Red Signal, or, you know, if you have a few turns off, you can definitely set up an attack with it. And because of the blockade, Jeffery couldn't play the Professor Sycamore he has in hand. Ooh, and there's a Team Flare Grunt. Okay, it does appear to be 2 fairy there, and we are looking like we're going to get a quick game 1. This is kind of how the Exeggutor deck works, you know. In theory, Jeffery should get a little bit better of a draw. Maybe not be totally out of it, but this, you know, Israel's deck accomplished exactly what it wanted to do. So, wow, and back to Israel's turn. There's an Ultra Ball. Jeffery did drop that Malamar EX, so he will be able to at least survive the next few turns. And there's the Grass Energy on the Exeggutor. And because of the high HP of the Mega Pokemon, currently sitting at 150 hit points, or 150 damage, excuse me. Once Jeffery passes the turn here, the Mega will still live until Israel's turn. There's the town map. And I'm not actually sure I would have played the town map there from Israel. I think being able to kind of keep secret what is all going on in your deck, especially when you're running cards like that special energy Israel's running. You might not want to let Jeffery know exactly what's going on. And there's a second energy on the Malamar. We'll be able to do Maximar now. And Jeffery taking a look before ultimately deciding to go ahead and Maximar. That's heads and heads. That's a knockout. Wow. So that's pretty big. Israel can likely still respond. Don't quite have knowledge of his hand, but there's a lot of cards, other things going on. But getting the 2 heads there is exactly what was needed. Israel dropping the dice over the table, but a passerby is going to help them out. So it looks like that's a Tails on the Crushing Hammer flip. Here's the Hypnotoxic Laser flip. Also a Tails. Oh, no. Oh, yep, yeah, Tails. Versus Seeker for Israel, and that Versus Seeker is just one of the best cards in the game. The reintroduction to that card has changed a lot of things. There's the Plasma Energy, and there's the Sycamore. Israel really hoping to hit an out to Exeggutor here. The Headringer there will require Jeffery to have another energy to be able to attack next turn, and there's the Exeggutor. So we're going to see a blockade for 10, it looks like, going up to 40 after the Verbank takes effect. Fairy Garden going to go ahead and bump the Burbank. And there's a Roller Skates. Unfortunately, it hits the tails. Roller Skates is one of the ways you can play against this deck. You know, you don't need, as long as you can hit your heads, you don't need supporters when you're drawing 3 cards every turn. Looks like just 1 heads there, doing 60 to the Exeggutor. And that's one of the things about the Exeggutor deck is that, you know, Jeffery, the Exeggutor deck has executed its game plan up to this point. Jeffery has drawn a little bit poorly, but, you know, we saw that Jeffery knocked out the Exeggutor, and then Israel was able to respond. But let's say Jeffery had even a little bit more going on here. You know, if he can ride that Malamar to another knockout or two, he can try and ride it to victory. And, you know, that's the kind of thing is that this deck has a pretty low damage output, and it's, you know, its value comes from controlling the game rather than doing massive amounts of damage. So if your opponent does get an early setup, or your opponent, you know, draws well without having supporters or plays things like Roller Skates, they can just kind of negate your whole deck. But speaking of cards that have really shaped the format, Lysander's Trump card has been huge. So many more decks have, you know, decks have gotten better because of that card. Decks have become playable because of that card. That card has just absolutely changed the format. Let me see a Battle Compressor. Dumping a bunch of the cards Israel doesn't need anymore. He sees dumping that N. Well, he decides not to dump the N, but he was dumping the N so that both he can versus secret back, and because he doesn't really want to draw it. You know, he probably doesn't want to play it, but he especially doesn't want to draw it with 2 prizes left of 5. Dumping the town map because you cannot play that card anymore. And I think he decided to dump the Archies was the last card to get back the Empoleon. And there's the Verbank off of the computer search. Oh, and there's another Pokemon draw for Jeffery, so keeping him in this game, but I'm not sure for how long. I guess it's going to depend on these flips as well. I can't really tell what the... That's a head, so that's 1 heads is enough. And that's the other advantage of the Exeggutor deck that you're seeing here. Even though Israel definitely is on the back foot now and has to try and regroup, Jeffery has expended a lot of resources to take 2 prizes. So that's one of the big advantages that non-EX decks get, is that your opponent actually has to knock out 6 of your Pokemon, or at least 6 of the Pokemon that you're going to be attacking with to get anywhere, whereas you only have to knock out 3 of theirs. And it seems simple, you know, 1 prize versus 2. It makes sense. It's why it's a drawback to EXs, but it does matter when you have to take up so much time and so much effort to knock out 2 Pokemon, particularly when you're playing against a deck with Verbanks and Lasers that are kind of just winning by themselves. You know, this Malamar is going to go up to 150 next turn, and that, you know, it forces Jeffery to do something. And there's the Exeggutor. So Jeffery is going to be forced to retreat the Malamar, or play a heal card or something that does not leave that Malamar active with as much. Ooh, so it looks like Jeffery was just about to go ahead and attack, and then Israel reminded him that he will get knocked out due to the poison in between turns. Doesn't look like there is anything he could do anyway because that blockade is active. He can retreat and pass, but yeah. So interesting decision there. If he if Jeffery did announce the attack name already, Israel would. It doesn't matter. But if he had announced the attack name already, Israel did not let him have to take it back. Once you declare your attack name, you are in the attack step, and the only thing you can do is go back if your opponent lets you, or declare a different attack. So it didn't end up mattering there because Israel had the plasma energy to activate red signal on his Genesect, but it is really, a player maybe with a little bit more at stake here than Israel. His invite, already well respected, but could have definitely forced Jeffery, if he didn't announce the attack name, to stick with it and just get knocked out. But Israel Sosa is going to go ahead and take game 1. As always, On the Bubble is brought to you by TopCutCentral.com. Visit TopCutCentral.com for all of your Pokemon singles, sealed product, and accessory needs. Use the coupon code BUBBLE to get 10% off your order through the rest of this season. So if you need to pick up some of those Rayquaza EXs, some Shaman EXs, anything like that, feel free to head over to Top Cut Central. The best thing about Top Cut Central, there's a lot of good things, but the absolute best thing they do as far as customer service goes, and I'm saying this only as a customer, is their shipping time. I have definitely ordered from them on a Monday before with normal shipping, and it's there Wednesday or Thursday. I don't know how it's possible, but they're definitely on top of things over there. So check out TopCutCentral.com. So we just saw Israel win that match pretty handedly. One of the better players in the U.S. right now. Like I said, last year he ended up winning 3 regional championships, including Seattle, this very event, beating Michael Chin, Seattle's own Michael Chin, in the finals. So definitely one of the more respected players. He's already qualified for the World Championship. Jeffery starting with 4 basic Pokemon. Not a thing you see every day. Alright, and friendly handshake and a flip. Israel starting with Jirachi. Not the best starter. Actually, basically your worst starter. Oh, and Jeffery decides to let Israel go first. Interesting. Not something I would have done there. I think that going first is better regardless of the situation. I don't think anyone's really come up with a situation that I feel is actually a reason to go second. But interesting to see what Jeffery was thinking about there. You see Israel dumping 2 Exeggutors and an N. And if you're wondering why he's putting supporters in his discard pile, it's so that they can be brought back with Versus Seeker. So there's a Propagate, plays the egg, attaches to it. And there's a Roller Skates, and it's a Heads. And we do see that Herbal Energy on that Exeggute. Herbal Energy, when you attach it, it heals 30 damage in the Pokemon you attach it to, and it has to be attached to a grass. So, interesting little way. I don't think I've seen many of the deck lists run it, but maybe I've missed it. But I do think this is an Israel creation. Interesting, especially when you're dealing with low HP Pokemon like Exeggutor, which can, definitely benefit from healing a little bit here and there. And it looks like Jeffery has filled his bench. He has a Spritzee, a Xerneas, a Diancie, a Keldeo, and a robo substitute, but no. Oh, he did. Okay, so he did attach. Excuse me, did not attach to his active. Muscle band on the execute. Ultra Ball away, and Ultra Ball and a Verbank. I imagine Israel will go ahead and get an Exeggutor here. Definitely want to start the lock ASAP. And there's the attachment and a Sycamore. So it looks like Israel will be able to get the blockade off this turn, which is nice. Starting with a turn 2 blockade is exactly where you want to be when you're this deck. Ooh, and there's a head ringer. A little added value on the Diancie. We see the blockade there doing 30, plus adding 30 from the Verbank. Top deck looks like an Evil Tall EX for Jefferey. And the situation Jeffrey's found himself in is interesting too. Pretty unfortunate for him because not only is Israel going to take a prize off this Evil Tall here, but it's going into Israel's turn, meaning that Jeffrey will have to make a decision and then let Israel get the first advantage. So he can, send up one of his, send up his Diancie, let's say, getting ready to attack with it, but Israel gets to make the first action, which is really tough. It's much better when it can get knocked out during your turn, so you can choose what to promote based on the information you know. It's likely that the robo substitute will just get promoted here, so it's not the biggest deal in the world in this exact situation, but it can mean a lot. Oh wow, so actually Jeffrey decides to sacrifice the robo substitute and just play an Evil Tall EX, so he's going to put himself in a little bit of a worse position, having to choose what to promote. He does have a lot of Pokemon on the bench though, and it's clear that he's putting his stock into one thing. And there's the laser and the heads. So Israel has been able to, at least early in this game, do exactly what he intends on doing from the beginning. He just wants to blockade, wants to laser, hit some crushing hammers. He does need some crushing hammers on the Diancie, though that would be nice. The head ringer does serve as kind of a stalling effort, but the crushing hammer would be where he wants to be. And there's a blockade. Israel debates playing the end, but realizes that Jeffrey didn't really do much last turn, so it's pretty unlikely that he has anything. Does wake up, but not sure if that's going to be too relevant, because I think the way he's going to be able to get out of this is a switch card, preferably. Yeah, and we see him devoting another energy to that Diancie, and could be a problem. I don't know what this deck, this deck is kind of not a standard deck, so I'm not sure if any switch cards it runs, but letting Israel take an EX knockout here going into 3 prizes when you have Pokemon like Spritzee in your deck cannot be good, especially because you're just putting yourself so far behind as is. It looks like Ultra Ball is resolving here, debating on what to get. Tyler Inamura, 3-time regional champion, has won his first round, still searching for his world invitation.
Video game check-in is now over. Video game check-in is now over.
And here comes a Battle Compressor from Israel. And we did see the Mega Evolve last turn, which is going to be good. Jeffery will still need one more energy to attack through that Headringer. But I don't think energy is the problem he's facing right here. Genesect for Israel. And right here, I think Israel is just thinking that he needs to keep doing what he's doing, set up another Exeggutor as he's doing. And if you can do that, when you have 2 Exeggutors up with things, he doesn't have Rizian yet, but when you have 2 Exeggutors with the rest of your stuff up, such as Mr. Mime, Rizian, etc., you are really doing it. You know, the fear and the disadvantage this deck has is that if they can knock out an Exeggutor and you have a hard time recovering, you don't get the blockade off, they have a turn of support, it's going to be tough. But when you can stream those supporters, especially when you're under no pressure like Israel is here, but when you can stream those supporters, when you can stream when you can stream those eggs, it's huge for you. We see the Keldeo rushing in, getting the blockade for 60. The Burbank does get bounced there. The Xerneas does no longer have the poison on it, of course. It's on the bench. Well, looks like Jeffery's without much to do. Unfortunately, because of the weakness to grass on Keldeo, it is going to be not going to work out in his favor here. Additionally, that Xerneas has 170 hit points, currently sitting at 150 damage, so if Israel has enough time to set up the Genesect, he can do 100 to the active, 20 to the bench, and take an EX knockout. He's likely not going to do that. He's so far ahead and wants to keep the blockade lock up. But that is an option and something you really have to think about. You know, sometimes it is appropriate to just say, hey, I'm going to let this Pokemon get knocked out. You take your prizes, but then my board is full. My board is clean of damage and nothing that you can exploit. So that's one of the biggest things the Exeggutor deck gains too, is you're so resilient versus end, because even if you have a low amount of prizes, as long as you're blockading, they can't end you out. You know, they just can't actually play the card end, which is a weakness of a lot of decks. You know, we've seen comeback. I've watched multiple 1-6 comebacks or 2-6 comebacks just off of the power of end. There's a Crushing Hammer. A Tails there, but these hammers are going to be big flips. You know, Jeffery's so far behind, he just needs to draw another energy for the Diancie, and if that would have hit there and made him have to draw 2 energies in a row, I think that probably would have been a nail in the coffin. We see Israel with, I think, 2 or 3 Plasma Energy in hand, going to be able to red signal at will here. Which is another way, I didn't even think about that, but it's another way that Israel can take advantage of that. Xerneas having so much damage on it, is just red signaling it and knocking it out. He has no reason to do it here. He can just blockade, take 2 prizes off the Keldeo, move down to 3 prizes, and then at any time take a knockout on that Xerneas. This deck may play Max Potion, so that might be a reason why he wants to fire it off early, especially as he already has 2 Exeggutors set up, but definitely not something he needs to do. And there's the knockout. 2 prizes for Israel. Robo Sub wisely gets promoted. The draw is a Lysander's trump card, unplayable card. Malamar EX hits the bench. You see a Muscle Band, a Lysander, and a Versus Seeker, it looks like, in hand for Jeffery. Not the best. But it is something. Yeah, there's the red signal. So Israel's just going to go ahead and take the knockout here. And then any knockout on the board, besides the robo-sub, of course, will win Israel the game and the match. At this point, no reason not to play a town map, especially when you know something like computer search is prized. So whatever piece of the puzzle that Israel needs next turn, he's going to go ahead and grab with the computer search. The draw is a Florges EX. And there's a Lysander's trump card from Israel. And there's the hypnotoxic laser. And the knockout. So Israel Sosa wins 2 pretty dominant games to move to 1-0 here at the Seattle Regional Championships. Will be interesting to see where his journey takes him. You know, like I said, came off a big win at this event last year, defeating Seattle's own Michael Chin in the finals, and now trying to advance. He's 1-0, 7 more rounds of Swiss to go, and before that expanded top 8 in the morning. So we'll see how it goes. Thank you for watching.